And we begin the readout tonight with President's Day, a federal holiday that technically only celebrates the birthday of America's first president, George Washington, which is why it's written with an apostrophe S. America's 46th president, Joe Biden, spent the wee morning hours of this President's Day pulling off an unprecedented visit to Ukraine, something the White House spent months planning. Biden's visit to Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, was both a highly symbolic demonstration of solidarity with Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, and with the Ukrainian people. And it was historic. The surprise visit was the first time in modern history that a U.S. commander-in-chief visited a war zone where the U.S. or its allies did not control the airspace and where there are no American troops on the ground. It was a highly guarded and grueling trip that included a 10-hour train ride for the famously train-loving Biden into the heart of the country. In Kyiv, the president insisted that the U.S. will remain steadfast in its support of Ukraine and announced an additional aid package.
Together, we've committed nearly 700 tanks and thousands of armored vehicles, 1,000 artillery systems, more than 2 million rounds of artillery ammunition, more than 50 advanced launch rocket systems, anti-ship and air defense systems, all defend Ukraine, and that doesn't count the other $500 million we're announcing with you today and tomorrow.
The American president was one of the last Western leaders to make this journey. President Zelensky, sitting shoulder to shoulder with Biden, praised the trip as historic, timely, and brave.
Thank you very much for coming, Mr. President. That is a huge moment of supporting the Ukraine.
Biden's visit came just 2 days after Vice President Harris attended the annual Munich Security Conference in Germany and announced that the U.S. had determined that Russia has committed war crimes against humanity and crimes against humanity during its now year-long invasion of Ukraine.
I say to all those who have perpetrated these crimes and to their superiors who are complicit in these crimes, you will be held to account.
As the president and vice president affirmed the United States' commitment to Ukraine's freedom and to the NATO alliance, the pro-Putin faction in America held a weekend rally, complete with pro-Russia demagoguing. The Rage Against the War Machine rally went about how you'd expect, Russian flag and all.
This proxy war that we're fighting against Russia right now could turn at any moment into a direct conflict between the United States, NATO, and Russia.
I think that we can deal with the war issue very simply. And believe me, and I'll explain it more why I believe this, that the answer is end the Fed.
You and Antony Blinken and Victoria Nuland and Jake Sullivan and the rest of the warmongering neocons at the heart of government here in Washington, along with the vassal states in NATO, are the principal provocateurs.
Yes, that was Ron Paul, and that was Roger Waters. Wow. Meanwhile, over on Fox News, clearly showing zero signs of embarrassment or self-reflection after having been exposed as knowingly lying to their audience about the 2020 election, things went about how you'd expect as well.
We've entered into this Mad Max era of foreign policy because we have no leadership at the White House. And of course, Putin has taken advantage of this. China's eyed Taiwan. And then, we've pushed them closer together. But, I think the question for a lot of people of the audience is how long does this go on? What does winning look like?
Over in Congress, the MAGA party, led by Marjorie Taylor Greene, continued not to care about Ukraine's independence and what that might mean for the rest of the world. She also tweeted a call for parts of the U.S. to secede from the Union, a little throwback to her state and region's Confederate past. Joining me now from Kyiv is Ali Velshi, MSNBC correspondent and host of Velshi. Also joining me, Michael Beschloss, NBC News presidential historian. Both of you good friends of the show and of mine. And Ali, I do want to start with you and I'm going to join Nicole Wallace. I pretty much just agree with whatever Nicole Wallace says anyway, but I want to also join her in commending your incredible coverage. It's been so personal and so moving. And, because I know that you have made a lot of friends there and talked to a lot of people, I wonder if you could just give us a sense of how the President of the United States visiting today, how did that read in Kyiv to folks you spoke with?
Well, thank you, first of all, for saying that. And there's a sort of piece of my heart that's here in Ukraine after the time that I spent meeting these amazing, resilient people. And I guess, as I was saying to Nicole earlier, Ukraine's been fighting this war with one hand tied behind their back, or as I said earlier, a quarter tank of gas. And really in the last 6 weeks or so, the world took stock of this and said, maybe we need to think about everything we're prepared to give Ukraine and give it to them now. Because if they lose their footing at this point in winter, where Russian missiles and rockets rain down on critical infrastructure and takes the power out, makes people cold and increases suffering. If they lose their footing now, this thing could end. And the president of Poland, who's going to be speaking about this tomorrow with President Biden, says if this thing is still going on a year from now, Russia may become emboldened. So when you said, what does victory look like? Victory looks like not having Kyiv taken in 3 days, which is what Vladimir Putin planned to do 1 year ago. Victory looks like the fact that they are still fighting. Russia has not taken another piece of land, more land since October, which is why we're all very closely watching what happens this week. This was always going to be a kinetic and active week here in Ukraine, because by the end of the week, Vladimir Putin has to have something to show for a year of fighting in this place, and he doesn't. So now he's at a sharp poke in the eye with Joe Biden standing right here with the president of Ukraine today. This is a meaningful and historic trip.
Michael, it's a trip that could not be the more opposite of the previous president, who treated Volodymyr Zelensky with disdain and tried to bribe him and extort him. I wonder if you could kind of give us the step back on what this trip means, not just for the Ukrainian president, but for the American one. Joe Biden has put a lot of the stake in his presidency into the defense of democracy around the world. This feels like the most sort of potent message in that regard.
Yeah, I think what Biden did today goes straight through 2 centuries of proud American history. Just what you said earlier, Joy. Presidents, let's say that LBJ and Nixon used to go to Vietnam, but they'd appear on an American air base that was pretty well controlled. To find a day of this kind of presidential bravery in a war zone, you've got to go all the way back to 1864, July, when Abraham Lincoln, as president, went to see Confederate soldiers who were firing on Washington, D.C., on the brink of taking it over. And literally, Lincoln got up and some guy behind him who didn't know it was the president said, "Get down, you fool." And Lincoln turned around, and I wouldn't have liked to be that guy seeing the president's face of disdain, asking who the guy was. But Lincoln was there to show determination to see the Civil War through. 1814, James Madison as president, this is how rare this is, went to Bladensburg, Maryland, an area that we both know pretty well, Joy. And there was a battle of Bladensburg. The Brits were just about to conquer Washington, D.C., just as they were as an enemy soldier, group of enemy soldiers was in 1864. So James Madison went on the battlefield and said, I'm president. I'm showing how determined we are to resist the Brits. Goes back to one other thing. George Washington in 1754, before he was president, long before, was in the French and Indian War of all things, and he was in danger of being killed himself. He wrote to his brother, "The bullets whistled past me, and I found something charming in the sound." That's what presidential bravery in wartime is. Yeah. Joe Biden goes all the way back to that.
That is incredible. This is why we love to have you on. It's like the best dinner party ever. We hear all these wonderful stories from history. And Ali, this was to the point that Michael just made. This was a trip that was with tremendous risks. We are not obviously at war with Russia, but had anything happened to that train, or had he flown in or anything, there were deconfliction procedures that were taken, where the sort of back channels had to be issued to make sure that President Biden was safe. Can you talk a little bit about the complexity of getting this particular world leader into Kyiv?
Well, I encourage everybody to read the accounts of it that were given by the pool reporters who were on it, because it reads like a wartime thriller, which is remarkable. First of all, Joe Biden might be the only guy with a smile on his face like that after getting off a 10-hour train ride because he really likes the train. But remarkable. I mean, got on this train. You say deconfliction. It's really important because there's people who are saying, well, by telling the Russians a couple hours earlier that he was going to be in Ukraine, wouldn't that actually maybe cause more problems than it's worth? Well, the Russians, I don't think, are prepared to do what would be done by attacking the president of the United States on Ukrainian soil. There were American planes and NATO planes right on the border of Ukraine and Poland. It's unsafe for American or NATO planes to come into Ukraine because they could be targeted, but they were ready to go. They were in the air if anything went wrong. But I'm telling you, it was wild. They were on this train. Everybody knows where the train line goes. It pulls into a station here in Kyiv. There was a convoy that came here. It was a very small footprint that was with President Biden. Of course, once he's in Kyiv, there are Ukrainian soldiers, and there was security that joined that train. The train stopped a few times in the 10-hour journey, and we know that at least one time it was to add more local security, more people who might meet military members. But that was a great risk. And by the way, we knew that Joe Biden was going to Poland. Now he's in Poland on exactly the same schedule. So he's added, I don't know, 40 hours to his schedule, and he's still going to go to Poland, and he's still going to deliver a speech tomorrow in which he commits American resources and NATO resources to the defense of Ukraine. But this is truly, if you watched today, you watched history.
Yeah, if you're concerned about Joe Biden's age, you probably don't know Joe Biden because he's a fairly determined character. He's going to do what he wants to do and needs to do. And Michael,
I got tired reading about what he's done.
And I love trains. I'm not sure I could do 10 hours, though.